Hello, this is Dean and HollyKem Sunseri. Welcome to I Have a Voice. I had a couple, we both do counseling, marriage counseling, life coaching. I have a couple years ago that really had a very good marriage, very compatible, loved each other. Just like happens, they had their children, they continued to evolve, and they started to drift apart. Things were building up, and the drifting occurred not because they despised the other person, not because they didn't like the other person. But what eventually happened was they started doing certain things that were destroying the relationship that they didn't even realize. And so HollyKem and I were talking. We said we need to do a couple of shows on the five devastating mistakes men make in relationships, and also the five devastating mistakes that women make in relationships. So today, we're covering the five devastating mistakes that women make in relationships. And these mistakes actually are often done without really knowing it. So we want you to be really sensitive and to do a check for yourself. If you're married and you want to have a really good marriage, you know, reflect on these things and see if they apply to you. So we're gonna jump right in. As I said, our topic is the what? The five devastating mistakes that women make in marriage. So let's go to the first one. Putting kids before your husband.
Yeah.
Tell us about that one, HollyKem.
Yeah, well, in this situation, when you side with your kids, you may think they have a good point. However, you don't side with your kids in front of them against your husband, because that's called splitting. And the two people that are supposed to be together are the parents, and they make the decisions, and then you tell the children. They don't have power to make decisions. You may allow them to have a voice in the process, but they're not the decision makers. So when you put them first, and I'm not just talking about when they're babies and you got to feed them and their needs and all of that.
Yeah, that's something
Yeah,
important to understand.
yeah,
We're not talking about
right,
taking care of your kids' needs.
right.
We're talking about something totally different.
Yes. This is the emotional, mental, situation. So it's like if your kid says, you have a rule that, the kids have to be in by 10 o'clock or whatever, and they ask you, can I stay out till midnight? And you know the rule, they know the rule, and your husband's rule is strict on that. And he's not going to bend at this point on that situation. And then you side with them, and then you and your husband are fighting.
Yeah.
So you have to renegotiate that with the husband and come up with a rule that works, but you don't side with them. And then now this is gone, because that's not healthy for the family. It's not healthy for the children. It's not healthy for the marriage.
Yeah, and it also has to do with priorities, right?
Yes.
Not making your spouse a top priority.
Exactly.
Again, we're not saying not take care of the needs and neglect the
No.
needs of the kids, but really the top priority needs to be your spouse.
Mhm.
There needs to be quality time together.
Yep.
There needs to be date nights. There needs to be time where you actually schedule quality time being together, because it's very tempting for all the focus to become on the children,
Right.
and we begin to forget nurturing and putting wood on the flame of the fire of the relationship. Because at the beginning of a relationship, love is a gift, infatuation is a gift, passion is a gift. It's given to us, it's there. It doesn't stay there the entire marriage automatically. It has to be worked on. It has to become a priority. So that's number one, is making the kids a higher priority, or putting them before your husband. Let's get to number two. Not practicing self-care.
Yeah, that happens to women a lot. Is that we put everything in front of us instead of putting ourselves inside of that package. And, it's one thing if that's all you're doing, taking care of yourself, but we're not talking about that. When a majority, the most women, they will neglect going to get their hair done. They'll neglect going to work out. They'll neglect having a hobby. They neglect a lot of things for themselves, and they sacrifice that for their children, for their husband, for their family. But it has to be a priority because you start to resent other people.
Yeah.
If your husband goes play golf once a month and you never do anything, you don't see your friends, you don't do that, you don't take a day for lunch with your friends, nothing. And then, your husband goes work out and, it's too expensive. We can't afford it. I'm not going to do it. But then you resent him for doing it,
Yeah.
You make sure that he's got all his perfect clothes for his, work. And then you don't go and take care of yourself and buy yourself, a wardrobe, whatever that means. I mean, you, of course, you always want to stay inside of your budget and inside of your thing. But, if you have, 1,000 a year to put on outerwear and you hand it all over to your husband and you don't buy anything for yourself, you're going to resent that.
Yeah. Yeah. So ladies, we're giving you permission to practice self-care.
Yes.
Whether it's working out, whether it's doing things that help nurture you.
Right.
Obviously it has to be done in balance.
Of course.
But we're really advocates that, look, the more you take care of yourself, the better you will be to your spouse. Just to add another thing, I found over the years that in terms of romance and connection, women are often stimulated by love, honest communication.
Exactly.
Honest, intimate communication. Oftentimes, men are stimulated by their eyes, by what they see. Mm-hmm. Not that you have to be on the cover of Vogue, right? Mm-hmm. Magazine, but self-care is very important in that. And so if you want to keep the love and the romance alive in the relationship, know that self-care is not only a gift to yourself, but it's also a gift to your spouse.
Well, I'm just going to throw this out there. Like if you're going somewhere, you get ready and look good, but if you're home, you don't. So, it's not about, you have to be like if you were going to a wedding, but, put your lipstick on, do something, if that's the way that you present yourself, that you want to present yourself with some type of, self-care.
Yeah. And if you identify with any of these, go ahead and tell us in the chat without giving us too much information, right? What you identify with. Let's go to the third one is weaponizing sex.
Yeah. A lot of women will withhold this if they get too many resentments. They get all these resentments. They get upset. They hadn't had a voice about them through the, time that they're together. And then they withhold this thing and to be heard or to be seen or to have a voice about other things. And it's not a good thing.
Yeah, and that's also has to do with relating to making sure you communicate your needs to your spouse.
Yes.
Sometimes women don't have a permission or really feel that they have permission to speak about what's important to them, what their needs are to their spouse. And that's a formula for resentment. That's a formula for things that are building up. And then that's also a formula for sex to become something that starts to become weaponized. Mm-hmm. And so it's not meant to be, it's meant to be an expression of love and one of the greatest gifts that God gives us in a relationship. And when it becomes a tool to manipulate and to express anger and hurt through withholding, then both people lose. Mm-hmm. Both people lose. So that's a real important one to really be vigilant against. Let's get to number 4. To stop communicating admiration and respect.
Yeah. And, one of the things is that we have another show about this that you could watch, but what men need, and men need to be respected for what they bring to the table. We know, I mean, if you're married, you know what your husband doesn't bring to the table, just like he knows what you don't bring to the table. However, there are many, many things that he brings to the table, what he is good at. And in that, that has to be watered like a plant. So if you water the negative, the unhealthy, the missing links, that's what you're going to get, more of that, versus nurturing what is it that they bring to the table. I'm going to tell you the one that I say about my man is that, in that, Dean is highly educated, and he is studies, and if you want to know something, if I want to know something, Dean can study and figure it out and all that. However, he's not really big on the learning curve of studying if something needs to be fixed. Okay, so
I'm getting better at that.
you get better, but I'm just saying, over 30 years,
that's
so
true.
when I would be like frustrated because I know he's smart enough to fix that thing, I say, oh, he has soft hands. So it's like he has very soft hands, HollyKem, and he does. He has the most softest hands anybody I've ever met. So it's like, what's the benefit I get here from him not holding tools and having calluses on his hands? Okay, so he has soft hands. So you find the thing that is the counteractive, and and I do tell you have soft hands.
You do all the time.
That's right.
And when you talk about communicating admiration and respect, yes. Look, men's egos, I find, are more fragile than women's.
I'm glad you said that, and that me.
It's true. It's true. And the expression of admiration and respect, the couples that do really well, I heard, is that there's a ratio of 5 positives to 1 negative. Yeah, I want you to hear that. The couples that do really well in a relationship, there's a ratio of 5 positive, encouraging, admiring things spoken to 1 negative. Yeah. The ratio of couples that don't do well, that either end up towards divorce or end up staying together and being miserable, it's usually flipped of that. There's 5 negatives to 1 positive.
Right. So, and who wants to be around somebody that's always pointing out everything, every single thing you don't do to the highest standard?
So tell your spouse, thank you for working so hard. Yes. I really appreciate that.
Yes.
I love the way you interact with the children.
Yes.
Thank you for the meal tonight. It was really delicious, which
yes.
I say all the time.
Yes, because he likes everything. I'm so lucky to feed him anything. I can feed him banana sandwich with peanut butter. He's like, oh, this is so good, honey. I can make a roast with salad and bread and gravy, and he's like, this is so good, honey. I could buy Subway sandwiches. This is so good, honey.
Yeah.
So he really appreciates the effort and the food.
The other aspect is the respect part. And the respect is important in the sense that, I really respect the way you handled that. I really respect the way you run your office. I respect how you were parenting our child and took care of that. Look, I know there's other stuff that needs to be addressed, that needs to be worked on, but you need to balance that out. And so, the question is, as a wife, do you communicate admiration and respect to your spouse on a regular basis?
Well, and the other thing too is that a lot of times it's like, well, that's what people will say, well, that's what they're supposed to be doing. Yeah, they are. You're right, that you're a good father, that you provide for the family, that you come home every night, that you're not drunk, that you don't have affairs. Yes, exactly. However, it is nice to hear it.
Oh, absolutely.
That you see it, that you appreciate it, that it is important to you, that you haven't changed, that this really does matter.
Look, this is a little trick.
Even if it's your, it's your standard and your morals, you still want to be told that that's important. Yes.
Look, this is a trick.
What's a trick? Give it to me.
If you like something that your husband's doing,
and you want him to do it again,
and you want him to do it again,
and again,
and again,
and again,
express admiration. of
Write
that.
it, text it,
Thank
make
you
a video.
thank you so much, honey, for being on time for dinner because it makes the evening work so smoothly. I really appreciate it.
Thank you
You
for
do?
bathing the children. Thank you for changing his diaper. Oh my God, that was awesome. Whatever it is, have a voice about it. Say it, see it, acknowledge it.
Yes.
And then they'll do it again and again and
They'll do
again.
it again. Yes. So let's get to the next one. Number 5, the devastating mistakes that women make in marriage is criticism versus problem discussion. And I'll explain what I mean by that. And I say, where is the ball? Outside or inside him? Well, what do you mean? What do you mean? Look, we have to address issues and problems in our relationship. That's normal. I want you to pretend that the problem is the ball. Let's go to the example of me coming home late and not being on time. I'll be home for 6. I come home 6:30, 7 o'clock. I'm
Without calling.
Without calling. I'm consistently late, and it throws the whole schedule off. The problem is that I come home late and I'm not accountable to the time that I told you. That's the ball.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, as a spouse, as a wife, do you put the ball outside of both of y'all or do you put it in him? If it's outside of him, this is what it looks like. Honey, you said you'd be home at 6 o'clock. You showed up at 6:45. You're 45 minutes late, and that's upsetting to me. That's talking about the ball inside of both of y'all. The ball inside of him is, honey, you're always late. You're never on time. You're inconsiderate SOB. And won't you get your stuff together? Mm-hmm. You're so undisciplined. All right. Those were 4 character assassinations in that one sentence. The ball's not outside of both of y'all, but you're making it inside him, and you are expressing things about his character. Yes, he might be late, but you don't have to point out the character defect. You need to point out the ball. You need to keep the ball outside of him. That's a difference between discussing the problem and criticizing the individual.
Right.
It's a subtle difference, but it's very real, right? It's not to say that issues should not be discussed. They need to absolutely be discussed. Because there's this interesting term, the over-adjustment cycle, is when you have a problem, I come home late, you don't address it, I come home late, you don't address it, you're getting very, very angry. Then you just start adjusting, you all eating by yourself and me eating alone, but you're not addressing it, and then you start making adjustments.
Then you don't even have dinner
ready. You don't even have dinner ready.
and then you go out to dinner and he has no idea where you are with the kids.
So you have this over adjustment
of reaction.
A reaction to the situation, and it's not being addressed, and it doesn't work for either person, and it becomes a chronic problem. No, what we're saying, it has to be addressed, but address the problem and don't turn the ball and put the ball inside the other person. And certainly that's vice versa, right?
Well, all of these can be vice versa for both sides.
Yes. So number 5, which is so important, is talk about the ball outside of the person and don't put it inside them. Make sense?
Yeah. Well, another thing too is that we all have voices in our head that criticize us, criticize ourselves, and are not the kindest thing. So in this, when I learned to speak on what is upsetting for me, it's the behavior versus the internal character of the person. And, you have to separate that for your own self to be able to communicate that. Because if you criticize them on the character of assassination, then what happens to yourself is that you start to criticize yourself. And then now we both feel awful about ourselves and we don't want to be with each other. And then we have children, we have families that we love. They love each other. Our families love you. Your family loves me. It's like, you know, divorce is very difficult.
Yes, it
And
is.
it's very painful. I don't care how it goes around, even if they need to get apart, it's very painful for all people. So, when you learn some of these skills, a lot of this is skills.
Yeah.
When this is not about bad people. If you don't have it, like I don't have the skill to play tennis. I used to want to play tennis, but Dean can play tennis. Dean didn't like to play tennis with me, honey. Tell the truth. Tell him why. You don't like to play
it's not
tennis.
fun. I mean, you hit the ball over, it doesn't come back. I mean, you hit the ball over again, it doesn't come back. It gets old.
Yeah, he's like, you don't want to play tennis with me. I'm like, why don't you want to play tennis with me? I'm fun. He goes, yeah, you're fun, but I don't get to play. You hit the ball, I never get to hit the ball back. I'm like, it was true. So in a relationship, we hit the ball back and forth. We hit the ball back and forth. And sometimes you take your ball and you want to run. I understand, but you got to come back with the ball, So in this, there's things that we have to have movement on. And, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be challenging, but it's nothing that when you learn the skill, you can learn to do it. Like if I got a coach and, put enough effort into it and I could hit the ball to him and he could hit it back, we might be playing tennis today, but I didn't do the work. So we don't play tennis. we do other things.
Yes. And the couple I initially alluded to at the beginning, the wife did a number of these things in terms of behavior towards him, and it started to erode the relationship. But the good news is that it was reversed once they got some help. They got some help, tweak some skills, learn some skills like HollyKem did, and really help them reconnect to the original connection that they had when they were together. And we really want that for you. Why you fell in love.
That's one of my questions I ask all my clients. What made you fall in love with that person? What made you fall in love with that person?
Yeah.
And get them to see again what it was that was the connection from heart to heart.
Yeah. It's so good. And that's our heart. We want that for you. We want you to have a fulfilling relationship that's life-giving. When you talk about arguments end up either being life-taking or life-giving.
Yeah.
And there's ways to handle it in ways that they become life-giving. And that's really our hope for you. So we want to give you also a bonus tip in addition to the 5. We want you to learn to communicate in a way that your man thinks. So you women out there, we're wired differently. Yeah, we are.
Yep.
We're wired differently. And we want you to learn to communicate in a way that a man thinks. So we did a video on this very same thing, is how to communicate with your husband. So we'd encourage you to click on that right now and watch that video. And until next time, we say,
have a voice.